Hey guys, this is Brian Lewis, and I'm here today. We're gonna talk about the Boston Celtics, and we're gonna have a real discussion about the Boston freaking Celtics. Okay, I've gone a little bit in depth over the past couple of weeks with myself, with my other groups that I'm in, and all the forums that I'm involved with, and this is what it comes down to with the Boston Celtics. Okay, whether we make a deal or whether we not make a deal, that's really the question. I mean, it's really like a Hamlet sort of confliction here because there are a couple of directions to go. There's Andre Drummond, who went to school in Connecticut at St. Thomas More. I happen to know some alum from there, and they're all in on wanting Drummond to come in. He has people in Boston that he knows very well. So to have people in the Boston area, that's huge. But I think that's kind of a small factor depending on what the deal is. I mean, he has a long-term deal. Jimmy Butler, I think Chicago's full of shit. I don't think Chicago wants to move Jimmy Butler. I think they're only going to move Jimmy Butler, as Chris Mannix said on the Vertical, as he said on Zone Bertrand today on 98.5, the Sports Hub in Boston. He said they're going to move him if they get the deal they want. I mean, that Chicago feels they have all the leverage, but they feel like the Celtics are probably the only team that they would want to trade with because they have the draft pick to make it happen. They're like, well, if we get a top 3 draft pick, then that's pretty freaking solid in a deep draft where they might be able to get a guy like Dennis Smith, Lonzo Ball, Markelle Fultz, even Jason Tatum, Josh Jackson. And you get the idea. I mean, those 5 guys in last year's draft, they would all go number 2 in the draft. Maybe even they would all be better than Brandon Ingram, Jaylen Brown, Dragan Bender. So this is a much deeper draft than 2015 was. And I feel like the Lakers, now with Magic Johnson in there, it's going to speed up the process a little bit. Danny Ainge has this going for him, okay? Jay Crowder, Avery Bradley, and Isaiah Thomas all have pretty decent contracts. They're not making a lot of money. I think the 3 of them combined still make less than what Horford makes. So that's a huge thing. And I think overall what the Celtics are looking for is I feel like they have a deal with Tucker and Bogut in their back window. I don't think the Celtics value necessarily. I think they want to play that 4-round-1 style with Horford being in the middle. And I think what they're looking for is a big for their second unit because Amir Johnson has been one of the worst big men in the NBA. So if they end up getting Bogut and Tucker, that's fine. So that's the opening part. And now we're going to go piece by piece here. Every single Boston Celtics draft pick seems to be, it's kind of crazy because the Celtics got the Brooklyn deal done in 2017, and in 2013. That was the big freaking Brooklyn trade. And you know what? It's the way it is. I feel like with the Celtics, there have been a lot of cases within the fan base that have been going, do you trade the draft picks and try to get superstars and compete now and try to beat LeBron, especially with Kevin Love out for 6 weeks? Now you can catch the number 1 seed. Or do you try to develop the talent you have and be good for the long run, which is the way Golden State did it, the way that Indiana tried to do it with Paul George, Roy Hibbert. And if they actually didn't pull the George Hill deal, they could have had Kawhi Leonard. So if you really think about it, as long as Danny Ainge doesn't make any dumb trades, we could be in the same exact position Indiana was in, and instead of trading Kawhi Leonard for George Hill, in a sense, we can keep that and have a better perimeter. So that's kind of the idea I'm looking at here. Now, if there's one guy I'm trading for, I will trade both Brooklyn picks. I'll be more than willing for Paul George. Paul George is a top 10 player in the NBA. Paul George, Al Horford, Isaiah Thomas, that's good. That's pretty freaking good. And then Isaiah may or may not come back next year. And if you have a verbal agreement for a superstar, I'm sure you could trade Isaiah Thomas. So that's all that's coming down to here. And this is the crazy part of it all. Avery Bradley and Marcus Smart. There's going to have to be a decision made between those two. One of them stays, one of them goes. Personally, I would keep Smart, trade Bradley. I think Bradley right now, if you were to trade Avery Bradley right now, you could get Jimmy Butler and Paul George for Bradley, Brown, and the 2017 pick as the base of the deal. I would rather trade the 2017 pick than the 2018 pick just in case Michael Porter, because I think Michael Porter is the best player in either draft. I think the kid right now who's going to UW next year, he might be the best forward I have ever seen come out of high school. And remember, I remember LeBron too. LeBron's pretty close. This kid's pretty close to LeBron James. So if you can get yourself a LeBron, a Kevin Durant, and a Paul George through the draft, and you don't have to give up any assets, then freaking, I would just say, kick back and enjoy and watch the rest of the NBA. Try to catch up a little bit. Now, the other factor here, and I mentioned the Lakers earlier. They hired Magic Johnson. They have Rob Pelinka as the GM, a former agent to Kobe, and now I think he's going to have to. James Harden and Trevor Ariza are going to have to find new agents because Pelinka is now a GM of the Lakers. So, with that being said, what is their strategy going to be? I would assume that the Lakers are probably going to want free agents. So that probably means that the Celtics may even be forced to take the route of trying to develop talent, because there is no chance that Blake Griffin would choose Boston over LA. There is no chance in hell that Chris Paul is choosing Boston over LA. There is no chance in hell that a Kyle Lowry, especially Kyle Lowry, is choosing Boston over LA, especially being division rival with Toronto. And never mind the fact that Toronto actually has a pretty decent team up there, so you might not even leave Toronto. The Lakers weren't even getting free agent visits from LaMarcus Aldridge, Al Horford, Kevin Durant. They didn't even get the freaking visit. They didn't even get them to sit down with them. So, and this is what it comes down to. The Boston Celtics have everything going for them right now. They're 37-20 with a roster that has a guy who's playing out of his freaking mind, and Al Horford, who's not playing as well as he probably should. And then you have Jay Crowder, who's been hurt, but he's been good when he's been healthy. Avery Bradley's been hurt for the sore Achilles. I think he's missed like 18 games. Marcus Smart missed some time. Jaylen Brown's been hurt since a little bit before the All-Star break. Kelly Olynyk missed part of the season with an injury. Terry Rozier has had to step up and play. Gerald Green's been having to step up and play. James Young is starting to get more time before the All-Star break. His shot looks pretty good. As far as I can tell with the Celtics, there are plenty of guys on this basketball team that can be traded for, and I think they would be assets immediately for a team looking to head in a new direction. But of course, if you're making a trade, and the Celtics have to understand this, their best assets are Jaylen Brown, Avery Bradley, Marcus Smart, the 2017-18 first-round picks from Brooklyn, and then maybe that 2019 Memphis pick if Mike Conley and Marc Gasol hit the crapper and they can't replicate the offense they get from Zach Randolph. And Vince Carter is probably going to retire after next season, because as I heard, he's not retiring this year. So this is all what I'm coming down to here. The Celtics right now are in a position where the Andre Drummond deal, the Paul George deal, the Jimmy Butler deal, whatever deal they make, these are the facts of the Boston Celtics. The Celtics are 30th in the league in rebounding. There are 30 teams in the NBA. They need rebounding. So, what I would want, if we were to make a deal with Melo, they got to have Kyle O'Quinn in the deal. If you make a deal for Paul George, you got to have Al Jefferson in there. You got to have Kevin Seraphin in there. You got to have one of those guys in the deal. If you make a deal with Drummond, then I would like to see Stanley Johnson somehow thrown in there. I mean, just because Stanley Johnson has done absolutely nothing in the NBA, and I think Johnson's a guy that's a little bit better than what I thought Justice Winslow was. And Winslow's been okay, but Winslow's no big star. I think Stanley Johnson can be a lockdown 3 in a couple of years when we decide to trade Crowder. So if you trade Crowder to Detroit in part of the Andre Drummond deal, you got to get Stanley Johnson back. Or take your chances with Kentavious Caldwell-Pope and just free up more money in free agency, because you have Drummond locked in long term. You have Horford. You already have your front court locked in. And Horford can play face up in the high post. Drummond might be a better scenario. So I'm just saying, Celtics fans and everyone else galore, if the Celtics make a deal, I still don't think we're going to beat the Cleveland Cavaliers. Now the reason's not to make a deal, because we're not going to beat the Cleveland Cavaliers. We might be able to get to the Eastern Conference Finals with one more piece. Maybe 2 more pieces. We're not going to win the Eastern Conference. We're not going to beat Golden State or Houston at this point. So this is what has to happen. Danny Ainge, get some small pieces. Go get Andrew Bogut and PJ Tucker. That's fine. This offseason, when Johnson, Drebko, and Zeller leave the team, hopefully Gerald Green can work his way to to stay with us. You bring in Yabusele and Zizic, two international prospects that I loved watching last year, especially Yabusele during the summer league. And I'd like to see Zizic in this team, a 7'1" guy who has some nice little post game, something that the Celtics haven't had since Al Jefferson, Kevin Garnett, and Kendrick Perkins in a sense. And here's what the reality is. The Celtics need bigs. Paul George and Jimmy Butler don't solve that. This is Brian Lewis, everybody. Have a good night.